Hello and welcome. This is Midday Report on TVP World. My name is Anna Kalczynska and here are the latest. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has warned that the nuclear plant in Zaporizhzhia is facing a critical situation as it enters its second week without power. Joining me now is our correspondent Alex Kadier in Kiev. Alex, so how serious is the situation exactly with this power station and what could be the risks?
Well, good afternoon, Anna. It is, of course, a serious situation. Anything to do with Europe's largest nuclear power station sat in the middle of an active war zone is a cause for profound concern. We've heard from the IAEA, the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency, about the situation, describing it as stable. The Russian side, meanwhile, saying that the situation is under control and that the staff at the plant know what to do. The radiation levels, according to the IAEA, remain normal at the plant, but the situation remains precarious, and that is not a word that anybody wants to use when it comes to nuclear power stations, because since the 23rd of September, the external power to the plant has been cut, therefore relying on diesel generators instead, that sparking a very stark warning from the Ukrainian president.
For the seventh day now, and by the way, there has never been such a thing before. There has been an emergency at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The situation is critical. Due to Russian shelling, the plant has been disconnected from the power grid. It is supplied with electricity from diesel generators. This is extraordinary. The generators and the plant are not designed for this. They have never worked in this mode for so long, and we already have information that one of the generators has failed. It is the Russians who are preventing the repair of the power grid lines to the plant and the restoration of basic security through shelling. And this is a threat to absolutely everyone. No other terrorist in the world has ever allowed himself to do to a nuclear power plant what Russia is doing now.
A very stark warning from the Ukrainian leader there, of course, with memories of 1986 and the Chernobyl disaster. That power plant just 500 kilometers away from Zaporizhzhia's largest nuclear power station in Europe. Certainly a cause for concern. Again, Rafael Grossi, the head of the IAEA, saying the situation is stable, but that very same agency has warned time and again, repeatedly, that active combat operations next to these power stations could risk a critical nuclear accident. Of course, that will be a cause for concern not just for Ukrainians, but for all those neighboring countries. We're talking about a power plant that is, give or take, 500 kilometers from the Moldovan capital, just shy of 700 kilometers from the, just over 600 kilometers from Bucharest, the Romanian capital. Of course, a concern for those across Ukraine. Both sides blaming each other. The Ukrainian side, you just heard that from President Zelenskyy, saying that it was Russian shelling that cut off that external power to the nuclear power plant. The Russian side blaming Ukraine. Now, why does this matter when it comes to the operation of the plant itself? We know that those 6 nuclear reactors have been shut down. It is not an active nuclear power station, and it has not been for a long time. But nevertheless, those reactors, though cooler than if they were in operation, still require constant water to be pumped to keep spent nuclear fuel and the reactors cooled down. So clearly that has to happen. Diesel generators, emergency power in operation to keep those pumps flowing coolant into the power station. But nevertheless, the IAEA, the Ukrainian government, deeply concerned about the situation in Zaporizhzhia.
Thank you so much, Alex. From Kiev, Alex Kadier. And now, European leaders are meeting in Copenhagen to thrash out defensive solutions amid increased drone incursions and a proposal to unblock Ukraine's long-stalled EU accession bid. So we are joined now live by our EU correspondent, Angela Skujins, who is in the Danish capital. Good morning, Angie, and what else can you tell us about today's events in Copenhagen?
Good afternoon. So nothing is off the cards when it comes to this high-level meeting in Copenhagen. Almost all of the leaders from across the 27 EU member states have showed up for these talks today, where they're expected to hammer out key solutions when it comes to European defence. That proposed drone war from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, the 19th sanctions package against Russia, but all eyes will be on this new proposal spearheaded by the European Council President Antonio Costa. Today, he wants to gauge the appetite from the other leaders present at this meeting, whether they are interested in moving forward with Ukraine's EU accession bid through a qualified majority vote. According to the EU treaty, for any EU member state to move forward with its negotiations as part of joining the 27 EU member strong club, it requires from all of the leaders. We know that Slovakia and Hungary have previously blocked these efforts in the past, but a major issue that has already emerged is that the Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico is not attending this meeting in Copenhagen today due to illness. However, TVP World spoke to his advisor at the Warsaw Security Forum recently in the Polish capital. This is what Miroslav Lajcek had to say when it comes to supporting Ukraine's EU accession bid.
Look, Ukraine is our neighbor, and when my Prime Minister met with President Zelenskyy 3 weeks ago, he said very clearly that Slovakia wishes Ukraine to achieve a just peace and to be able to focus fully on its economic development and European integration. And he said that Slovakia will be very supportive on both. That means Slovakia is ready to be part of security guarantees for Ukraine, and Slovakia fully supports Ukrainian European ambitions, and not only verbally but also through the transfer of our experience. So this answers your question where Slovakia is. When we speak about opening accession negotiations, we always refer to 26 versus 1. We never say 25 because Slovakia has been very clear on that.
So it's very interesting hearing that commentary from that senior advisor to Robert Fico, in which he reiterated that Slovakia would support Ukraine's EU accession bid. However, the big question is whether Hungary will shift its dial. This is exactly why this proposal by the European Council President Antonio Costa at least appears to gather steam. But another challenge to this is it requires approval from the 27 EU member states to change the process. However, there are no formal decisions expected to come out of today's meeting. It's meant to set the groundwork for another European Council summit in the next few weeks, where we're hoping to hear some more formal conclusions when it comes to the 19th sanctions package against Russia and how Ukraine can join the European Union family.
Which leaves Viktor Orban quite isolated on terms of EU enlarging and taking on the board Ukraine. Thank you so much, Angela Skujins from Copenhagen. Temporary border controls on the Polish borders with Germany and Lithuania will be extended for another 6 months. The regulation has already been signed by Polish Internal Affairs Minister Marcin Kierwiński and will enter into force on Sunday. The latest 6 months extensions means that controls on Poland's border with Lithuania and Germany will remain in place until April 4th, 2026. According to Kierwiński, the goal of the extended controls is to monitor the migration route that leads from the Baltic states through Poland and into Western Europe. Border controls were reinstated on July 7th and since then have been extended several times, including most recently from August 6th to October 4th. Poland has opened a new training center for Ukraine's armed forces, a joint effort with Norway and other Nordic and Baltic allies. Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz stressed that building lasting security requires not only weapons but unity and resilience, and also a well-trained army.
We are building a new home, a home that is meant to be safe, a home that should be a refuge for our countries, our families, our communities. I cannot imagine building it without Norway, without its involvement. Here today, at the training ground in Lipa, Jonsburg, there are 250 Norwegian soldiers. Soon there will be 500, and then several rotations of 500 soldiers. They are training Ukrainian soldiers, but also Polish soldiers, working together with Poland and with other Nordic and Baltic countries. F-35s are protecting our skies. NASAMS systems are deployed not far from here, near Rzeszów-Jasionka Airport. We remain fully engaged in defending our airspace, protecting NATO, and supplying Ukraine, because this ongoing operation has two parts: training, but also humanitarian and military assistance.
Ukraine's victory will weaken Putin and will strengthen inspirations of the post-Soviet nations. Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya told TVP World how Ukraine's fight against Moscow is linked to anti-Russian resistance in Belarus and other post-Soviet states.
I met with General Kellogg for specifically Belarusian topics, though of course we explained how victory of Ukraine important for Belarus as well. Victory of Ukraine will give opportunity to many other post-Soviet Union countries, to strengthen our independence, because Russia doesn't see Belarus, Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, Armenia as independent countries. They want us to be their satellites, to be they treat us absolutely as not the children who decided, to choose their future by themselves. No, just return to our common past. But we are sovereign countries. We want to, Belarusians, for example, want to be part of European family of countries, because we historically belong to Europe and we mentally Europeans. So that's why victory of Ukraine will weaken Putin and will strengthen actually aspirations of the nations and strengthen actually European Union.
The Czech economy is growing faster than previously thought. Although Wednesday's revised figures are not much higher, they show strong fundamentals and make the Czech Republic a kind of an outlier in the Central and Eastern Europe.
This is Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala on the campaign trail. On Wednesday, he received an unexpected gift from the country's statisticians. The Czech economy is expanding faster than previous estimates suggested. This makes the Czech Republic a curious example among its Central and Eastern European peers. The country is growing strongly despite maintaining fiscal discipline, with its neighbors from the region running high deficits, albeit ones that don't translate into solid growth figures. There is one exception to this rule, however, and it's Poland. But voters may not reward Petr Fiala for this exceptionalism, as disposable income in the country has barely grown since 2019. Unlike elsewhere in the region, the government's main opponent, Andrej Babiš, is already saying he will ramp up the deficit, calling the budget a tool, not a mean in itself.
And in a televised address last evening, Czech President Petr Pavel has opposed claims that the upcoming parliamentary elections are intended to bring a change to country's democratic system.
The Czech Republic heads into the parliamentary elections this weekend after the shadow of disinformation and geopolitical tension. President Petr Pavel has urged voters to focus on security and sovereignty, as polls show Andrej Babiš populist ANO party leading and coalition building set to decide the country's future. On the eve of the pivotal vote, the President of the Czech Republic addressed the nation, cutting through campaign noise to insist the election are about policies, not a regime change. And he put it plainly: security first, sovereignty intact.
We need a government that will protect our sovereignty in the community of democratic countries and not leave us at the mercy of Russia and its efforts to re-establish a sphere of influence in Central and Eastern Europe.
The immediate threat? Disinformation. Just this week, Czech intelligence flagged Russia-linked TikTok networks, trying to boost pro-Russian parties and sow chaos in the information space. A former hybrid threats official is warning that the Kremlin has used this playbook before.
Just a few days ago, the intelligence services actually uncovered a sophisticated network of operations in Czechia run from Russia on TikTok, not dissimilar to things that we've seen, for example, in Romania. Remember, in Romania, such an operation led to the vote being cancelled by the Constitutional Court.
The election is set to take place on October 3rd to 4th. Polls put the populist ANO party above 30% and the centre-right coalition Spolu near 21%, but the outcome hinges on smaller parties. The far-right SPD, liberal-centrist Stan and Progressive Pirates, the populist protest movement Motorists and the left-wing Stachilo. Their performance will shape coalition arithmetic and decide the country's direction. Officials stress the vote itself is paper-based and decentralized, hard to hack. The risks are peripheral: fake result portals, phishing and viral fakes. Police patrols and Interior Ministry monitoring will be in place throughout the weekend. Security and sovereignty, those are the stakes. The ballots will speak for themselves on October 3rd and 4th. The coalition math will decide the rest.
And on that, we conclude the Midday Report. Thank you so much for your attention. Please stay tuned to TVP World for more.